Hey, I'm Zack Semke, Director of Passive House Accelerator, and I'm super excited to share Putting the Punk into Passive House with you. Welcome to Part 3. In Part 2, I shared about the power of nonlinear change and its role in both the climate crisis and in climate solution making. We looked at the exponential growth of clean energy as well as passive house deployment, and we asked, where are we headed with warming? What is today's business as usual projection? Well, one thing is clear. We need to reset our BAU, our business as usual assumption. Just a few years ago, right before the Paris climate talks, the widely accepted consensus was that we were headed for about 5 degrees Celsius of warming by the year 2100. That warming corresponded to one of IPCC's representative concentration pathways, or RCPs. That one is called RCP 8.5, and it would be absolutely catastrophic. Luckily, as you can see from this analysis published in Nature, RCP 8.5 is now considered the worst case, no policy scenario, and is highly unlikely. The world would need to strip away existing climate policy and turn to a huge ramp up in coal consumption to make it happen. The red and yellow lines at the center of this chart show two projections by the International Energy Agency, the same famously conservative on renewables IEA, showing their projections under current policies and pledged policies. Those lines bring us in line with a modest mitigation pathway that leads to about 2.5 degrees Celsius warming. Still way too high, but massive progress compared to where we were just a few short years ago. To illustrate how unlikely that old business as usual of RCP 8.5 is, this graph shows how per capita coal consumption, which has been relatively flat for the last century, would have to increase by 500% to be consistent with RCP 8.5. Now, that's not to say that there aren't other ways that we might hit 5 degrees Celsius warming. There might be some very unforeseen and unpleasant surprises or tipping points that we pass that could do that. Anything's possible. But based on what we know now, 5 degrees Celsius warming by 2100 looks really unlikely. This analysis by Climate Action Tracker shows a range of the new business as usual as being somewhere between 1.8 degrees Celsius and 2.9 degrees Celsius. And this paper from Nature shows that if all agreements and pledges made at the Glasgow conference were to be implemented in full and on time, granted a big if, then warming would be held to 1.9 degrees C by 2100. Now, remember, after the Paris Agreement, even our collective pledges would have led to closer to 3 degrees Celsius warming. So this is progress. Still, talk is cheap, and we urgently need action. Jesse Jenkins of Princeton University sums it up well. We must awaken to the twin reality that we've simultaneously failed to prevent dangerous climate change and succeeded in preventing the most apocalyptic climate futures. Or to put it more crudely and succinctly, we're no longer totally effed, but we're also far from totally un-effed. And let's acknowledge that as exciting as all these exponential growth curves for clean energy and passive house are, we're not going to see some easy, straight path for the clean energy transition. There will be setbacks and frustrations and headwinds to get where we need to go. A major source of headwinds is the predatory delay of the fossil fuel industry, doing everything it can to slow the transition, to maintain our addiction to fossil fuels, and to generate as much profit now as possible. Climate futures be damned. Interestingly, we also face headwinds from NIMBYism, not in my backyardism, on the left. Environmentalism and environmental regulation have largely been about saying no to things in order to protect species, habitat, clean air, clean water, and rightly so. But today, the project of the clean energy transition requires a shift in mindset from saying no to saying yes. We need to approve the development of massive amounts of clean energy infrastructure, and fast, so that wind farm in the Northeast, or solar farm in the desert, or multifamily passive house project in an existing single-family neighborhood. We need to say yes in my backyard, not no. And then there's just the weird and unpredictable headwind, like the ridiculous energy waste of crypto mining that emerged out of nowhere. Despite these headwinds, and despite how frustrating climate policy inaction is right now in the US, let's remember that fossil fuel demand destruction equals climate security. The sooner that we destroy demand for fossil fuels, and that's exactly what we're doing with the revolutionary energy efficiency of Passive House, the sooner we pull down the price for those fossil fuels. And when the price gets low enough, fossil fuel reserves become uneconomic to drill or mine. The cost to extract becomes higher than the price that the fuel can command on the market. Fortunately, we have a bunch of virtuous circles, positive feedback loops with very positive outcomes to draw on to accelerate this demand destruction. We already examined Swanson's law in wind and solar and other clean tech. The more wind and solar we deploy, the cheaper wind and solar become, so the more we deploy, and that gathers momentum. Also, as renewables gain market share, they start to drag down energy price. Low prices can strand fossil fuels in the ground, leading to greater market share for renewables, and that gathers momentum. And as more power from renewables and negawatts from energy efficiency come online, fossil fuel power plants are idled more, which drives the cost of that fossil power up, which allows more power from renewables and negawatts to come online, and that gathers momentum. As electric vehicles become cheaper and better performing, demand for them increases, which accelerates R&D, which makes them cheaper and better performing, and that gathers momentum. As electric vehicles provide storage to the grid and power to homes, the value of what were intermittent renewables increases, driving more renewables to be deployed as transport electrifies, and that gathers momentum. And finally, energy efficiency. As we deploy more efficiency through approaches like Passive House, the market and supply chains respond, decreasing costs, which allows us to deploy more, and that gathers momentum. All of these virtuous circles accelerate fossil fuel demand destruction. So we have solutions on momentum to chart a different path, and growing numbers of young people are pushing back on the doomist narrative. To see how, please check out part 4 of Putting the Punk into Passive House. And to learn more about Passive House, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, visit PassiveHouseAccelerator.com, and join in at our Passive House Accelerator live Zoom events on Wednesdays. Thanks.